Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So it's been a while since I have done some breadcrumbs. So let's take a look at some of the questions that we did over the course of these last few weeks. I pulled some of the questions from the Facebook group that we did, and then we're going to look at some of these breadcrumbs to some of these questions. And I absolutely love this question because this was about the cocoa. I love all of the discussions that we had regarding cocoa and how we looked at that from the contextual family therapist perspective. So, after significant progress, the Rivera family, they have established new agreements supporting McGill's music while honoring family tradition. The family now reports fewer conflict and more conversations. In the late phase, the contextual therapist will primarily focus on what? So the whole object of breadcrumbs is for us to take a look at what's important to us in each of these questions. And then feel free to pause this video as I'm talking. And then I'm going to reveal to you how I would use the breadcrumbs if I was actually taking the MFT National Exam. So if we take a look at A, we have unresolved intergenerational trauma, we have strengthening new patterns, we have reassessing, returning. So sometimes some of those first words that we see is possibly going to lead us to our best answer. So if we were actually taking the MFT National Exam, we would highlight after significant progress. That's like your specifier. This family has made progress, right? Fewer conflict, new agreements, open conversations, the late phase, contextual therapy. So that way, if you feel like you're struggling with finding the best answer, you just simply go back and look at what's highlighted so that you don't have to reread the entire thing. So if we're in the late phase, we're not exploring unresolved intergenerational trauma. That's something that happens in the early phase, right? So you automatically get rid of A. What are we reassessing for? They've made progress. And what are we returning to if it's late phase and we should be terminating? Making B your best answer response, strengthening new patterns of reciprocity, supporting the family, and maintaining some of that balance and that give and take. That's what you would do in the late phase of contextual family therapy. Sometimes it's the words and the terms that you need to pay attention to that will lead you to the best answer, even if sometimes you don't know it. Like this question. A therapist meets with a couple first time, right? They each describe longstanding resentment about unequal contributions in the relationships, but both insist that the other partner just doesn't understand. And according to a contextual family therapist, the first step should be to do what? So when it comes to some of these questions, slow down, read the question, pay attention to the issue that is in the question, pay attention to what the question is actually asking you, right? So the couple for the first time, you would highlight that. Long-standing resentment, unequal contributions, right? Contextual therapy, because it's a contextual therapy question. First step. That's what you should be looking at, right? A says identify relational inequalities and assign a task to balance their ledger. Now, for contextual family therapy, that's moving way too fast. And assigning a task sounds more like strategic therapy, so get rid of it. B says establish multidirectional partiality by validating each partner's experience of fairness. That right there should stick out to you, but look at the rest of them. So I highlighted C, yellow, because I want you to be able to see how this might be an answer response that tries to attempt to trick you, because it's the first step, and exploring the family of origin is something that you want to do as the first step, but it's not actually the first step that you would choose out of these 4 answer responses, because the multi-directed partiality is kind of like that therapist getting to know the family, and you need to do that before you do anything else. I saw a few people pick this answer response, so that's why I had to let everybody know it sounds like it would be the first step, but it's not actually the first step out of the 4 answer responses. First step questions, put them in order in which they come, or get rid of them, right? And then of course D says help the couple negotiate more. No, that's moving a tad bit too fast. That's something you do in the middle phase. This is a first step question. Stay with me. According to object relations theory, what function does splitting serve in early development? Even for questions like these that are small, even for questions that just you feel like it's not enough information there, it is if you actually look at it. So this question is very it's not giving me enough information, but when I look at those answer responses, it's filled with all of this stuff. Let's take a look at this. Object relations theory, that's what you need to be focusing on. Splitting is what you need to be looking at, and early development. Now, I highlighted infant in yellow because it's early development and I don't want you to be thrown by it, because that's about the only thing that seems about right in those answer responses. The rest is wrong. If part of the answer is wrong, the entire answer is wrong. Make sure you always, always, always remember that. A says it helps the infant differentiate between fantasy and reality. First of all, they don't have nothing to do with contextual family therapy. Reality and fantasy, get rid of it. C says it enforces ego boundaries by integrating conflicting emotions. Now, conflicting emotions might sound like object relations. It is, because that's what splitting is a part of, but it ain't got nothing to do with no ego or the boundaries with the ego. So get rid of it. D says it allows the infant to develop object constancy. Now, here's the thing. Infant was highlighted in yellow because it's early development and what they're talking about. Object constancy has nothing to do with splitting. Object constancy has to do with, as a child, our caregivers or people that are in our lives that we care about, they may not be around us all the time, but we know that they still love us. That's object constancy. It has nothing to do with that. But if you pay attention to B, it allows the infant to preserve the image of the good object from the destruction of the aggressive impulses. Now, it doesn't sound the exact same way that I have taught it to you, but that's exactly what it is. It needs to preserve, which means protect, because growing up, splitting is a defense mechanism. It protects us from what? The bad that we don't really want to have to know. So we're going to split. There's a good part and there's a bad part. That is all that explains. But if you can do what I just did to get rid of all the other three, B should have led you to your best answer. Okay, this is a long one. So we're going to go through how to navigate some of these long questions, right? So a family presents to therapy ongoing power struggles between the parents and their teenage daughter. The parents report that the daughter refuses to follow the rules, and they often respond by grounding her for extended periods of time. Obviously, it's not working. The therapist decides to use a brief problem-focused approach aimed at interrupting the parents' repetitive patterns. The therapist plans to redefine the problem and prescribe a behavior task that is going to shift some of those interaction sequences. Which of the following best distinguishes how a Milan systemic therapist might approach this family differently from an MRI brief therapist? Now, when it comes to questions like these, you got two aspects that they are asking you about, Milan and brief. So both of the answer responses has to pave to both of them. But as you can see, these answer responses are quite long, so it might make you anxious when navigating them. Don't get anxious. All you need to do is go back to that question, take a look at what it is that this question is asking you. Now, here's the thing when it comes to this question. I'm going to reveal it to you. Here's the thing when it comes to this question. A lot of information in that question is a bunch of fluff, but I did it anyways just for the sake of us, because the answer responses has absolutely nothing to do with what the question is even talking about, a family that is being presented. They are asking you about the two different approaches, and that is what you need to pay attention to. The question is a bunch of fluff, I will tell you that. Which of the following best distinguishes between Milan and MRI? A says the Milan therapist would focus on the family's current interaction patterns, while the MRI therapist would explore transgenerational beliefs, maintaining the problem. Well, you know that one is incorrect, because an MRI therapist doesn't explore transgenerational beliefs. That's maintaining the problem. Neither of them do, really, so it would be wrong. But highlighted in yellow is the family's current interaction patterns. They don't only focus on that, making A incorrect, because they use circular questioning, right? A is incorrect. C says the Milan therapist would use paradoxical interventions to interrupt the problem-maintaining behavior. Yeah, they would do that. But the MRI therapist would use a positive connotation of the problem? No, an MRI therapist doesn't do that. A Milan therapist does that, making C incorrect. If part of the answer is incorrect and the other part is correct, the entire answer is incorrect. D says the Milan therapist would assign reframing tasks to create first order change, while the MRI therapist will focus on second order change through positive feedback loops. No, that is incorrect. Reframing task or whatever to create first order change is not what an MRI therapist, it's not what a Milan therapist would do, making that entire answer incorrect. Take a look at B. The Milan therapist would use circular questioning, hypothesize about the family games, while the MRI therapist will focus on identifying and altering feedback loops, maintaining the problem. That is your best answer. And the Milan therapist would use circular questioning, correct? And would hypothesize. The MRI therapist will focus on identifying and altering feedback loops that is maintaining the problem, which is going to ultimately get them through the first order change into second order change, making B your best answer. Remember, if part of it is wrong and part of it is right, the entire answer is incorrect. The Smith family, consisting of parents to adult children, has been in therapy due to the oldest daughter, Anna, suddenly developing severe anxiety. The Milan Systemic Family Therapist team hypothesized that Anna's anxiety was an invariant prescription designed to stop the parents from fighting. The dirty game is what they call it. After 6 sessions, the parents report that they haven't fought in a month, and Anna's anxiety has decreased significantly. So, from a classic Milan perspective, which of the following actions is most appropriate when you are taking a step toward termination? Now, again, it is a bunch of fluff in the question, but then it's not, because then you want to be able to make sure and understand that when this family started therapy, they've done this and now they are moving towards termination. But your best way to answer this answer is to know the steps of Milan systemic therapy, which is going to lead you to your best answer, right? So if we take a look at it, we go back again. I've highlighted all of the stuff that they say was the reason as to why they're in therapy, and now the progress that they have made. But from a Milan perspective, what are you going to do when you're leaning towards termination? A says assign a final paradoxical ritual to reinforce the family new pattern of organization. First of all, that happens in the intervention phase, not the termination phase, so you can get rid of A. You must know the steps of the Milan systemic therapy in order to answer this question. Get rid of A. Have the team offer a final positive connotation of anxiety. Again, a positive connotation is what? It's an intervention. That happens during the intervention phase. Get rid of it. A and B is automatically out. Shifting to a more client-centered approach. First of all, client-centered approach and a Milan therapy approach are on the opposite sides of the spectrum. Why are you doing that? It is the late phase of therapy. The family has made progress. So why are you switching the approach? Get rid of D, leaving C your best answer respond. Schedule a 6-month follow-up session to assess for symptoms. Milan systemic therapy is considered to be, I guess, long-term brief therapy or whatever. I mean, it is like 10 months or whatever, 10 sessions. But then, yes, you can schedule some follow-up sessions with the family. But you know why A, B, and D is incorrect. They're bonkers. Get rid of it. C is your best answer. Alrighty, so that sums up our questions for the breadcrumbs. If you have any questions regarding breadcrumbs, let me know. I do have other videos that I did breadcrumbs on as well. So this is the thing when it comes to breadcrumbs. I weighed heavily on this when I took my exam. It helped me so much. As soon as I started off, even with the first question, I'm highlighting. I'm finding the breadcrumbs. I'm finding out what it is that I need to know. When you are using the breadcrumb method, better known as the highlighting method that you have, the unnecessary details, you don't need to highlight that. There's fluff in a question. You will know it's fluff when you understand and know what does this have to do with the question. If it don't have nothing to do with the question, it's considered fluff, right? I want everyone to understand that these questions are fake. Though these situations might occur, these questions are fake. Do not attempt to have any type of emotional connection to them because the question doesn't care about you. Find the best answer and move on. Distracting information is the fluff that I was talking about. When it comes to a diagnosis question, sometimes they may have symptoms in there from 2 and 3 different diagnoses, but only one of them presents very strongly. You need to find that. Like I said, these questions are fake. Please do not attempt to make it seem like you know these people in the vignette or you are somehow trying to find a connection with this question and start with your what if thinking. There is no what ifs. It's only what's being presented there is the answer that you need to find. Do not go in there thinking that you know and understand the Rivera family, the Johnson family. I don't care what type of family it is. You don't know them. It's a question. Find the answer and please move on. Don't get lost in the woods. And I actually used that because I've been playing Legend of Zelda this weekend and the Lost Woods came to mind. So I said, don't get lost in the woods, right? You need to stay the course. There's a stem that they have, there's a model that they might use, the role of the therapist is there might be a timeline, and then there's a task that you have to find. First, next, best response, treatment plan, goals, whatever the case may be. That is what you need to be doing. Stay anchored to that. Don't get lost like that butterfly that flies up and you start looking at it. Nope. Stay the course. That is the whole purpose of using the breadcrumb method. I have had so many people tell me that the highlighted feature, the breadcrumbs, were their saving grace when it came to the exam. Also hearing the sound of my voice. So you got that and you got me in your head. Hey, I think that you're going to come out just fine. Alrighty, that ends up everything. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know and I will try my best to help you find the best understanding. If this video has helped you or if any of my other videos have helped you, please support the cause. Give me a super thanks. Please donate to this channel because it is going to continue to help me help others pass the MFT National Exam. I will talk to everyone soon.